Well, thanks for coming. Hopefully a few more will join, because this is actually going to be a really cool session. Let me just click, because there we go. So I made up a title that's incredibly clickbaity, and I'm very proud of it. But it's a panel, obviously. I've got 4 people here. I'll introduce them in a minute. But the idea of this session is that I've done talks before in the last sort of 4 years or something, because I realized that a lot of people were sort of thinking about the same things as I was. Like, all right, like we saw the keynote yesterday morning, probably all of us, and there was 100,000 announcements, right? And then I saw this book of news with 87 pages of PDFs of announcement. And you go, ah, what do I even focus on? And it's a bit the same kind of in life. We're going to focus a little bit on developer life today. And I thought, well, I wanted to share some of this stuff. So I did a talk first time in Sydney about 4 years ago. And it was incredibly attended. A bit for more people than now. But it's fine. And actually, if you want to move in as well, it gets a lot more excellent instead of sitting on the side, just to kind of point out the people that are sitting on the side. Just because this is a conversation, right? We're going to try and make it a bit more interactive. And I thought, okay, well, I'll propose like a session to Ignite on this particular topic. And luckily, I found 4 lovely people that would help me out, because I don't have all the answers. No one does. So it's a panel about trying to figure out what are some of the tips and the nuggets and whatever that we've all come across. But it might be that you have some stuff that we didn't know. Like, it's not like we're here because we know everything. It's we're here because we want to share what we do know. So don't take it as if we say it's wrong. It is because you're doing it. Like, it's just we just have opinions, right? Everybody has an opinion. So with that, let me just introduce the lovely people. Here we go. So first off, we got Sonia, who's here. Sonia works for Microsoft as a cloud avocado. Is that right?
Yes, I am. My name's Sonia, and I am not a developer.
That's right. I say developer life. I should say IT life, shouldn't I? Yeah, I know.
There are a lot of crossovers between how we manage our careers, etc. So.
Oh, for sure. And I even got a chair, and I can't sit down, but that's okay. Then we got Jessica from Sweden. Sorry, no, I can't help it. Jessica is also not a developer, as you like to say, but you do write code sometimes.
I started in the developer world of things and quickly realized that I'm not that good. I was better in other things.
Yeah, okay, well, that's fair. And then we got Michael Crump.
Hello.
And I was just going to little anecdote, because I came across Michael the first time when we were both creating Windows Phone courses for Pluralsight. Woohoo! So is that on?
I don't think so.
Just yell louder.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. So yeah, that was, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago?
We were back in the Windows Phone days. That was amazing. It was so fun. And yeah, I think we both had competing courses or something.
I don't know. We might have.
So I'm Michael. I work on Azure. I'm primarily responsible for a lot of the developer content that you consume, things like the Azure Developer Guide, to Azure Tips and Tricks, and to some of my new kind of stuff with Azure Developer live streaming.
Yep. And then finally we got Marcel, who is really tall. No. You're a developer.
Yeah, I'm definitely a developer, although my job title doesn't say that.
No.
But I have been a developer when I graduated from college. And I've been doing C, C++, and all that stuff, C# nowadays. But I still code, and I love to code. The thing is that I have a fancy title because I co-founded a company. And that's when you first hand out the fancy titles, and then you start trying to make money. So that's more or less how that happened. Yeah.
So there's 2 employees. Yeah, okay.
A little bit more now, but it's about 30 people now, but yeah.
Cool. All right, so that's the panel. You may see some of the other talks at the event as well. Unless they were yesterday. You can still see them online. And there's me. My name's Lars. I'm Microsoft MVP. I am a technical instructor for Azure on a training portal called A Cloud Guru. That's what I do every day. And I like to talk a lot, which I do. So I'll try and shut up a bit when these guys are talking today. So I'll just get straight into it. So I did show them the questions beforehand, so we had some idea of what we were talking about, okay? So the first question I wanted to ask is, like, what does success look like? Because we have this idea of, like, we saw Scott Hanselman on the stage doing a demo in front of 2,600 people and everything just worked, and there was a demo fail and he just handled it like, oh, wow, man, that's success. But I'm sure Scott has things that he doesn't like as well, like stuff he would be better at. So what does success look like to you? I'm going to start with Jessica, just because.
Just because.
Just because.
First in line.
Yeah.
Actually, it's been changing throughout the years. In the beginning of my career, it was the more money, the better you are, the more successful you are. It quickly changed. Now I feel like I'm successful if I can make a positive impact in someone's life, either being personal life or work life, or even as a user, because user experience rocks.
It's a good point, like this whole success and money. I mean, I think we all heard that a million times. Oh, money can't buy success. No, it can't, right? It's nice having money. It makes things easier in some cases, but it's definitely not what I would term as success, all right? I'm just going to let you go, because if someone has a...
Yeah, so for me, I came to realize that it's good to ask yourself a question. The question is, do I want to be rich? Do I want to be famous? Or something else? Because if you pursue rich and famous, then there are different paths that lead to that, I think. What I come to learn is that I love to work with people and also help other people unlock their potential. But it's something that you, I think, grow into over the years. When I was a C developer, it was all about the code, and I thought that the code was the most important thing, and that would get us somewhere. Finally, I learned that all the personal interactions is...
Code's not the most important thing.
Well, code is very important, but eventually it's not what makes your career, I think. It's the human interaction.
Yep.
And getting to understand that actually drives success, at least for me.
Yeah, again, this is all just personal opinions, right? It's success to you guys might look completely different, and that's fine. It's, you know. And by the way, there is a Q&A at the end if you want to have, questions. And I brought bribery. Tim Tams.
Nice.
And they are imported from Australia. I did buy them there and I carried them the whole way. They were on a velvet pillow in the plane, so it's just for you. So just keep your questions till the end and we'll be good.
So for success for me, just like we've kind of heard with some of these other panelists, is that, I also try to start out with like, okay, I'm going to like chase money and things like that. As I started getting like a family, I became more and more involved in actually just, being there to try to take care of them. And that we have different people that like searches for different things and measures, like they may want like likes on Twitter or followers on Twitter. Or it could be, I want to be a major like CEO at like a corporation. You've got to define like what is kind of in your heart and what is your like priority.
So how do you define that? Like?
Yeah, and primarily for me, it's by helping people. So everything that we do eventually will kind of like go away. But if you like help people, they're always going to kind of remember, some of the things that you did for them. And even like, with content and some other pieces, that content like lives on. It's also raising up the next set of people who's going to be kind of like taking over our roles one day.
It's interesting. I don't know why I was there, but in the middle of Western Australia, and if you haven't been to Australia, Western Australia is enormous. It's like the size of, 4 Texas or something? And there's nothing there. Right? There's just no people. There's nothing there. There's some mines, and they dig out lots of dirt. And there's a little cafe, 3 hours out of Perth, which is the big city, and it said on that sign, if you can't be replaced, you can't be promoted. And I'm like, yeah, but why is that here? And it was just, I just remember it so clearly, and that's exactly what you're saying. You got to help people, come up. Yeah, so that's a good point.
And it's really all of our jobs, like everybody here. Like there's always going to be the next generation. That's why I like, help others.
Yeah.
Because they're eventually going to be taking over all this.
Yep.
I think success for me has changed over the
that?
years. This is Dundee. This is Dundee, the down under dinosaur. And so at Microsoft, we have this little subculture of dinosaurs, and some of us Microsofties have them. Rob's actually doing a session. If you search for dinosaur in your session catalogue, you'll find the dinosaur talk on Thursday afternoon, where Rob explains how the dinosaurs came apart. I have the first international dinosaur, the only one outside of North America. And Johnson, our CVP of security, has cyber, who actually stands on some of the world's biggest stages at the security conferences and speaks with Anne. So there are a few of us that have dinos that make these random appearances at conferences. Success for me, though, has changed throughout the course of my career, and I think that's important to be flexible, because success for you can look different depending on different stages of your career or your family life. My husband and I ran our own business for 15 years, and at the early days of that, when we started a family, success was, can I go through the grocery store without having to add up everything I'm putting in the cart, because that's the only budget this week I have for food. So getting past that was kind of what success looked like for us. Now that I've got a full-time role at Microsoft where I do a lot of travel, success for me is a combination of, am I balancing my work with my family life? Am I getting enough downtime and being at home enough in the breaks of when I'm not traveling? But also, overall, I think generally in my workplace, it's been, am I doing something where I feel like I'm making a difference and I'm supported to do that? And so regardless of what work activity I've done, I've wanted to be excited about going to work in the morning and knowing that I'm doing stuff that is changing and making things better for people, and I've got the support of my organisation to do that.
It's interesting, I just noticed, like, everybody said it's about people, right? So I guess that's the takeaway from it.
And a little bit about code.
Yeah. So a few people also mentioned family, which we will get back to, so we're not going to leave that one alone. All right. How do you know what to prioritize? This is an interesting one, because especially as you start saying yes to things, I have a whole talk on how to say no. You just start getting things. Like when you start speaking, for example, just as an example, you start getting, and you guys will know this, guys, that's terrible. I shouldn't say you guys, you people, you lovely people, is that you just start getting more and more. Like, oh, can you speak at everything now? Like, and you just can't. So how do you know what to prioritize? And I'm going to start with Michael.
So whenever I see like there's like extra events or maybe there's other commitments, I try not to commit to things that are more than like 5 to 6 months out, because I know that in the moment when I first get that, I'm going to be like, oh, yes, I'm going to get to speak at this conference, or I'm going to get to do this thing. And then when it actually comes there, like the day before the session, I'm like prepping and like trying to figure out what I'm going to do there. So that's one of the things that I do. And also I kind of split like things that's important to the business of Azure than my personal like business. And so obviously high priority items that I get from work, I do those, but also what like my family plans to do. So like if we plan to go on a vacation somewhere, I prevent anything from blocking that personal goal.
Yep. So you prioritize by basically saying these are the important things and putting things in around it.
Exactly, because you can always fill around it, but the important things, yeah, you can.
All right. Who's next? Yes?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't have that good of an answer as he does. I'm still working on it. I
Yep.
just started to slow down because I'm one of those who speak at everything.
Yep.
I try to do everything. And an upside and a downside is that my husband, who is here too, is also a speaker.
Mm.
So we do it together. So there's no one that says, hold on a minute, maybe that's too much. So I think we need to talk afterwards. And I also need to see your talk about saying no.
Yep.
I think we
Yeah.
can all learn from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, myself, go.
I'm a train wreck if it comes to prioritization.
This is not going well, is it? Like,
Yeah, it's a nice question to ask, but it's really a mess.
it's hard, isn't it?
It's so freaking hard to
Yeah.
do it. And it's always balancing all these things out. And what you eventually you figure out that you didn't prioritize something because then it's too late. Because then you're in a mess, or you forgot to do something that's important to someone else. You didn't deliver on date, and that's the reason you didn't get the deal, for example, if you run a company. So yeah, prioritization is very hard. What I use for it to get better is this notion of the 4 quadrants. So you create like what is urgent and important, and what is like you need to do it now, and what can be done later.
Yep.
If you create those 4 quadrants, then put the items that you have on your plate and say, well, put them somewhere, and then you know, well, immediate and very important needs to be done now. And something that is not immediate but can be a little bit delayed, but still important, goes before the other things. And that's a way that can help. But again, I'm a train wreck at it. I'm trying to improve, but it's really hard.
Yeah, as again, we don't have all the answers right, but cool.
So at Microsoft, we use something called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results, and they're quite well known across different industries. They help me guide what is important in like 3-month blocks, and they kind of filter down through the organization so that what my team thinks is important to set as an OKR is in alignment with the rest of the chain going up, the chain of command, as it were. That helps guide sort of what activities I do in terms of is it in alignment with what we're trying to achieve this quarter, but the scope of that is still really loose in terms of I speak to people in the IT operations space. So I could rattle off so many different topics and Azure products and services that actually encompasses. We don't just work with one particular product. So that's the hardest thing for me, is like looking at all the bright and shiny things and thinking, that's really cool. I'd love to play with that. Like I want to do that, and actually narrowing it down a little bit. So my focus at the moment is governance, cost management, and identity. And those 3 things are my focus right now. They're not always going to be my focus. Sure. After I've come out of this season, Azure Lighthouse will probably be my next thing. But it's a case of taking some things in bite-sized chunks and going, okay,
Absolutely.
so I'm going to dive deep into these right now as my focus. From a day-to-day perspective, just a little bit of things like productivity tips. I have a folder in my Outlook called To Watch or Read, and that's stuff that hits my inbox that doesn't need my immediate attention, but like I really want to catch that webinar recording, or I'd really like to read that white paper and it's not urgent. And I dive into that when I've got downtime, when I'm sitting in airport lounges, or when my brain has been fried from creating PowerPoint slides and I just need to do something else to context switch for a minute. So then I kind of dive into that. And I get into the habit of grabbing a post-it note when I start my work for the day and writing down a maximum like 2 or 3 things that absolutely have to be done that day. So if I don't get anything else done, those things are the ones that are deadlines for things
That's
that
a good
have to be
idea.
done to get done.
That's a really good idea.
It just helps sort of clear my mind a little bit of what I've got to achieve, because there is so much cool stuff we could do.
There is. I just want to add mine as well. I'm just hosting, but still, for me it's goal setting. And again, I've done a whole talk on goal setting and the effects of it. I'm not going to go in through all the mechanics of it, but if you have clear goals, sort of short term, middle term, medium term, and long term, prioritization becomes really easy. And I'm not trying to make light of it. It's if you know exactly what you want to achieve, well, does the thing you're needing to prioritize, does that align with any of those goals? If not, well, it's not being prioritized, right? So, but the goal setting is hard. So there's not that it's all easy. It's just that there's a different path as well. So Sonia kind of almost answered a little bit the next question, but that's cool. How do you stay focused? Because this is something I'm terrible at, right? I like to do everything, like you just said. And how do you actually focus on the thing you need to do? It's really, really tricky. I find it incredibly hard, but I'd love to learn from you guys.
I'm going to finish off on that one, what I was saying then. So I tell people that my life is like a Bathurst motor race, which is one of our big motor races in Australia, where I know the outline of the track, but right now all I can see is the next straight or the next corner, and that's all I'm paying attention to as I'm driving down the road. So I know what I've got coming up on the radar, but literally, if you're asking me for something that's due in 3 months' time, I might have 5 or 6 events between now and the thing that you need, and all I can focus on is what is my next deadline.
Totally.
The best thing to kind of help me with the distraction of that is little things like focus mode on Windows 10 and putting my phone on airplane mode. If I need to spend some time and some deep thinking and attention on something, I will turn off all of my digital distractions to get some focus.
It's a good idea. Turn off Slack or Teams or whatever you use. Yeah, anyone else? Yeah, we don't all have to answer all the questions, right? Because we run out of time then. But if you've got gold nuggets, please share.
I'm not sure if it's called nuggets, but
Oh, then too late.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways that I stay focused with so the goals that I was kind of talking about previously. If those are aligned, at least you've got your top 2 to 3 and maybe a family, and I have mine split out to like a personal. That's where the focus goes to. There's always all of the other little like tasks and things that you can do. Those, they don't get that same sort of priority. Also, I'm a big believer in like getting rid of a lot of distractions from like your cell phone, just as mentioned. So I turn off all notifications. I actually deleted Twitter, every social media from my phone And I survived one full month without even tweeting on Twitter.
I noticed.
I gave it one like month of just kind of seeing if that helped with the distraction. Obviously, it helped me stay focused, but also the dev community is there, so I ran back. So maybe that was a fail.
It's interesting exercise, though, if you want to try it. Not necessarily for a month, but do it a week or a day or whatever. All right.
Yeah, for those of us who are not there yet with all the goal settings, I do a lot of to-do lists and to-do apps. And, well, I have one, really. Focus on one to-do app.
Yeah.
Also, timer, because if I'm stretched thin, I will stress about which item to get done or which conference to write the talk for. So I time box everything. If I don't time box, I will sit and do research for weeks.
Yeah.
For real. Once I did a talk, I had an hour talk about design for developers, and an hour talk, and I had probably done research for a 2-day session about fonts. So yeah, I need to time box that. So I set a timer and I switch through whatever tasks I have to do.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Time box everything, especially if it's not that important. It's a really good idea. All right, let's move on. So we're going to change direction a little bit. So I'd show these guys the questions first, and a couple said, "What do you mean?" And I didn't reply. So the idea is that it's really easy to get consumed by, we need to know all of the JavaScript frameworks kind of thing, right? And it's just not feasible. But you can be a generalist and know about all of the JavaScript in general and what each one does and look it up if you need it. Or you can be the Angular person that knows all that, or the .NET Core person or whatever. So in your, this doesn't have to be a long answer, but like, what would you recommend, or what do you do, or what have you done in terms of niche, or being like Google into a niche, or are you a generalist?
Yeah, so what I learned over time is that being what we call T-shaped or E-shaped or F-shaped in terms of your knowledge really helps. So you're a generalist in overall, you know what's going on in the industry, like the keynote, you've seen all the things that are happening, but you take one specific slice out of that, and that is your competency. For me, is that, for example, DevOps, which is also a broad perspective, but still, sure. DevOps is my spiel, you might say.
Narrower than technology.
I narrowed that down, and then in that category, there's even certain areas that I said, this is where I really want to focus on now, be very good at it, and then I can then, for example, leave it alone for just 2 years, because I was so deep at that moment. Yep. With that knowledge, you are ahead of the curve, and you can take something else that is then your focus. And that helped me in overall that being a generalist and seeing where the market is going, where things are happening, but still also being an expert in certain areas, which I think really makes you a living, because that's where you're asked for. You're the expert in a certain area.
But also I'm thinking if say you're a developer with, say, 3 or 4 years experience, you're not going to be an expert necessarily. You can be, but not necessarily. You might be more broad across things, right?
But the most important thing I learned as a developer is not particularly that framework or that thing that you're working on. No. But for example, be a ninja in your tools. Do understand how you can use all the nifty features of the environment that you have, because that makes you really very productive instead of still novice on the tooling side, but very knowledgeable about, for example, the framework or something else. And that really helped me in my productivity overall.
All right. Ooh, Michael's in for it.
Yeah, I'll add one thing to that. So when I started out early on into my career, there was a lot of, it was tons of like WPF and like Silverlight. And so I decided to brand myself around those technologies, because my like ultimate goal was probably still to work here at Microsoft. But I used that, especially Silverlight. Anybody remember that? I used Silverlight for really kind of that like entrance, and I guess I kind of owe Silverlight for that.
Everybody does.
Because it got me into the MVP program, which was able to expand the reach, but also when I started doing talks, if I did a talk on Silverlight 4 and people knew, oh, okay, well this is the person that's been blogging and talking about Silverlight for a long time. Nowadays, I'm much more on the generalist side. Since I cover Azure App Dev, I need to also be able to think like end to end. And so while I'll know that there's like all of these amazing, cool like databases, just having the knowledge of like, oh, okay, if a customer says, oh, when would I use this database for this app dev scenario? Having that generalist knowledge, I think, helps me. And if I ever need to actually like do it, then I'll just go read the docs.
All right, I'm going to go to the next question. I'm sorry, because we're going to run out of time. But I'll let Sonia answer this one. So this was, I was trying to get a bit of a, I guess, reaction out of this. But what price do you put on your family? Because most people would say, well, it's priceless, right? But obviously it's not, because we're all here, right? So there is something we're willing to sacrifice to do the other thing. So where's the point where you go, well, I'm not going to do that because I need to do this for my family? Or do you understand what I'm asking?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
So I did a talk here at Ignite last year that you can find online about burnout. And one of the things I want to encourage people is to have a broader version of what balance looks like, in terms of sometimes my family is absolutely my focus and I'm there and in that moment, and sometimes I'm very thousands of miles away from them at a conference here where work is very much my focus. So you've kind of got to balance that. I mean, we are as supportive as we can be as an organisation with people when things come up with family, but it really comes down to your personal decision of where you draw the line. I mean, some of us end up in faraway countries when family members are having birthdays, and sometimes that just comes with a job. We had a team member here who didn't get to Ignite until today. She missed yesterday because her son was going off to join the military. And so she made the decision that that was absolutely her priority for Monday, regardless of the fact it was kickoff of day one of Ignite. Yep. And we absolutely completely supported her in that decision. So it comes down to you having to go to bed at night and live with yourself about the decisions that you make.
That's a good point. And obviously this is asked in a way that's, a bit, controversy. But it's important to know that we can absolutely make sacrifices even for the, what's the right wording? We can sacrifice time with family to do other things, because we don't just do one thing. And for me, it's really important that my son sees that I'm not just doing whatever he wants and always being there for him. I work from home most of the time, so he's there as well, which is not always ideal because he just sees me at home. So it's important for me to show him that, hey, I do other things. I'm not just like, I have drive beyond him. So I think that's an important part of it.
One of the things that is interesting, I now have two perspectives, right? I was always an employee, and now I am an employer as well.
Yep.
Which is kind of crazy, because then you're balancing in between. Like, as an employee, what would I have done, and what as an employer am I asking from the people that work for me?
Yep.
And that is sometimes really frustrating, because you need something to get done, but then somebody's dog gets killed. And what do you do? Do you find then the human side of yourself, or is it the business side of things that prevail? The other thing that I would add to this is that being in the industry now for, 25 years, and my kids are now 18 and 19, so they are grown up. Yep. This is the moment you realize that you were not enough with your family, because on the one hand, it's like, they can do without me very fine. So it's more like getting the promotion as a dad, right? I'm dispensable, so that's good. But on the other hand, it's that you find like, oh, gee, what if I would have done it differently? So if you're early in your career and early in your family life, it's something that you still have a choice to make. Yeah. For me, it's more in hindsight that I might have said, was it really worth going to the MVP Summit while I knew that my dad was very sick and he would probably not survive to the next year, and it was his birthday? Yeah. And I made the decision to go to the MVP Summit instead. And those are the things that in hindsight you go, really? Yeah. Because what was so important? Was it that Silverlight was killed or something else? And I mean, no, but
Silverlight.
And it's very hard to make those decisions, but in hindsight they're easy to make, but at the moment,
no, it's not. It's not easy at all.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep going. I'm sorry. We've got to get through this. So I'm going to ask Jessica, how do you find opportunities? Because if you have a drive to be more. Like if you want to, hey, I read this article, or how do you get 100,000 followers, or like, how do you find those opportunities that gives you that drive and that springboard, I guess?
Today is word of mouth, actually. That's the short answer.
I've got a really
That's
short.
how I got most of my.
I got a short answer too.
work.
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be a
Right.
jerk and
As
word
it comes
of mouth.
around.
Do a good job,
Yep.
and people will see that you're doing a good job, and you will get more jobs.
That was pretty much the answer I was looking for, because that's how it is, right? And the other part of it, so I'm going to steal your limelight, is that opportunities don't come to you necessarily. You got to go find them, right? But does anyone else want to pitch in?
The one thing that I was going to say is social media is actually so important for our industry. Just think, I was from a little town called like Corner in Alabama. Like nobody knows where that's at.
Where's that?
Nobody knows where that's at, and even like with my parents, they were like, okay, yeah, you need to go do the military or some of these other things, which that's a 100% respectable thing. But I didn't. I wanted to be in technology, and so really, I would say through social media and through Twitter, and joining like the MVP program, and then I would go and I would drive like miles to go and hundreds of miles to speak at these smaller conferences. It was really brand identification, really helped with like the opportunities for me.
I've got to echo that. So I joined Twitter because I couldn't get to a Microsoft Tech Ed conference in Australia, and I signed up for a Twitter account so that I could watch the hashtag, and I started joining in the conversation with people who were talking about things at that conference that I was interested in. That was how I got onto social media. And by the time I interviewed at Microsoft 18 months ago, the first 4 meetings I had on the Redmond campus, there were people in each of those meetings that I already knew on Twitter and knew well on Twitter. And so when you kind of say to someone, I'm interviewing, and they're like, yeah, we know you in Redmond, I'm like, what? Pardon? Me?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we know who you are. So they do watch, and people who can influence your career do see stuff like that, especially when you're positive and engaging. And
and especially in the tech industry as well, right?
Yeah,
Twitter is
absolutely,
very
in our
important.
industry.
But to add to that, it's very important that you create a voice. I mean, that's the thing that actually drives that.
And
right?
don't be a jerk.
And so don't be a jerk. Really
so
important. But also have a voice. So don't just read all these things and have an opinion, but bring the opinion as perhaps something like, oh, this is another perspective on things, not the finite thing that it might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then and give wiggle room to everybody to chime in. And
Absolutely. And it's not always about, saying on Twitter how great Microsoft is, right? It's about explaining your position when there's things that you don't like. And we take feedback like that seriously too, when you do it respectively and explain why it possibly wasn't the best decision we made.
Yeah. All right. Can I move on? Yes? I want you guys to ask questions as well. That's why I'm kind of just moving along here. Just a real short answer. Who do you rely on? It doesn't have to be your family or such. So I'll give an example of me. One person I do rely on a lot is my personal trainer, because I hate workout, but he kicks my backside to get it done. So I rely on him to do that, otherwise I'd never do it.
I rely on my wife, that she still supports what I do.
Yep.
That's crucially important, yeah.
Same, but husband. And he
So
is,
you rely on his wife? That's weird.
on his wife. We just met, but
And just the quick thing I will add there is that also like your staff and the people that's like around you. I've got great people that helps me out, and that I get to like sometimes take the credit for it, but it's wonderful if you have good, solid people that wants to be there and wants to help, and they have that same drive and passion that you have, because you can't buy it.
And this is one of my favorite questions. What would you go back and do differently? I don't want everybody to answer that one, by the way.
I would actually go back and value my time and my knowledge much more than I did. I was underpaid or undercharged. I undercharged for the longest time. I mean, seriously undercharged, because I couldn't realize that stuff I did that I enjoyed and thought was fun, who would pay for that?
That's right.
I'm having fun. So I got a mentor on the subject, and overnight I increased my hourly rate 6-fold. Nobody raised an eyebrow.
That's the thing.
I don't think I'd do anything differently, to
That's
be
fair.
honest. I love the winding twists of my career that have brought me to where I am. But interestingly enough, when we do our connects with the Microsoft, which is kind of like a performance review thing, we look back on what have we done in the last quarter and what have we got planned to do for the upcoming quarter. There is a question in there, which is part of our growth mindset stuff that Satya talks about, that says, looking back, what would you have done differently? So we actually have to answer that as part of our reviews every 3 months. But we can do a bit of self-analysis to go.
Yeah.
So, what worked, what failed, what are you going to change for the next time?
Sure.
And I have the same sort of thing. It's with my life, I probably wouldn't do anything different, only because I think it led me to like who that I am like today, and even like my experiences growing up in the deep South, where like we like some of these stories are true. Like we would like grow food like in our gardens and then trade with like other people. Like all of those experiences, I think has really humbled me as I've gotten into this career.
Well, to be honest, I find it a hard question.
It is a hard question.
It's an extremely
Absolutely.
hard question, because you land where you land because of what you did.
That's right.
So what would have been the outcome if I changed something? But one of the things that I worked for one company for 18 years, and I stayed too long, I think. I stayed too long because I felt I owed it to him or something.
Oh, right. Yeah.
While that was definitely not the case, but it's something that was ingrained. It's more like ingrained in me. I'm like the Labrador dog. Always want to be loved by people, and I should have made that decision like 5 years earlier, because I went from enjoying my job to becoming frustrated. And frustration is the worst thing that can happen to you, but it's like boiling the frog. It's like it slowly gets to you, and then eventually you make the jump, but it's way too late at that point in time. So
There's an analogy about a dog on a porch sitting on a rusty nail moaning about it because it's too hard to get up and move, so he's putting up with the pain of the rusty nail. And I talk to a lot of people, especially after my burnout talk, who talk about what it's like working in the company that they work for and how they've maybe tried to make changes or tried to talk to their boss about the culture of the team. And quite often it's just, you're not going to fix that. You do need to start looking and go somewhere else. And it is the hardest thing to do. We say it flippantly, like, if you're not happy, just go and change your jobs. Like, it's not that easy to do. It's a big change. But, we've seen people do it and be so much happier that they finally made the decision and put in the effort and took the risk to go and do it. And sometimes
in the end, what you learn is that there are so many things that stop you from doing it, while in hindsight, it was not an issue at all.
No.
So people are so afraid of providing for their family or the risk that they take, but eventually it helps you really grow and also learn so much more. It was really opening up my world, creating and founding my own company, and now provide an environment that actually does what I wanted in the other company all the time. And trying to create that is much more rewarding than keeping with that company for so long.
Well, that didn't go where I expected, but that was cool. All right, I'm going to skip the next question, but no one knows. What is one surprising fact about your career path? Just if you have a funny, interesting, peculiar anecdote. They're all going, what?
Well, for me, that was really the moment that I, as a developer, started to understand that the interpersonal relationships that you need with other people and being a good person is really extremely important, much, much more important than the good code that you write. And I was always so proud of the code that I would go and tell people about my great code and show them how they should do it. And then in the meanwhile, I was not aware of the fact that that did not help them in their self-confidence, that did not help them in their path of understanding how to do it. And eventually, the human interactions, that's what actually builds great code and builds great products. And that was, I think, my epiphany, I would say, and that really changed the way my career went.
Anyone else?
Yeah, surprising fact, I owe it all to Windows Phone, so I'm not bitter. I think we, back in the day, had a Windows Phone camp, right? Yeah. So thanks to Windows Phone and their new it was called Metro Design Language back then, I think.
Yes.
I realized quickly that I was all about the user and the people and making it easy to understand things, and that's something I'm much better at than coding. So thank you, Windows Phone.
This session brought to you by Silverlight and Windows Phone. All right, we're going to go to questions because we've got 5 minutes left, and I want you guys to have a chance of asking questions. If you do, please use the mics on either side because it's being recorded, and if you talk from down there, they don't pick it up. We can't hear it on the recording. Okay, now, all at once. Yes, sir. Someone's got to break the ice.
Hi there.
Hi.
So you guys were talking about focus and time boxing and things like that. When I was a younger developer 20 years ago, I must have had undiagnosed ADD. I just could not focus. And this is a really old school technique, but it saved my career, which was the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yep.
Basically, it's like you set a timer for 20 minutes, just do it. 20 minutes, that's it. And then you can spend 5 minutes screwing around after that. And if you do that a few times a day, all of a sudden you've had a really, really productive day. So I don't know, I was just thinking about that when you...
It's good. You can actually buy Pomodoro timers, like the whole kit if you want to. If you've got OCD like me, you'd want the right timer, right? So.
I do the exact same thing, but 15 minutes.
Yeah.
20 minutes is too long.
Sure, yeah, whatever time works, right?
There's a ton of applications that you can get, like even like extensions for your browser and stuff if you need it there.
Yep. And then Google gets all your data. Anyone else want to ask questions? Come on. Oh.
I'll jump in with a career
All right.
fact while you're all thinking
Go
about
for it.
questions. I have no university degree, no formal training. I went straight into work the day after my last high school exam, and the big bank I was working for taught me IT on the job. So I had absolutely no formal training. And my other fun fact is I made a customer cry once in a meeting. So I
we all laugh.
was a service delivery manager for a large systems integrator. I managed a team of sysadmins and software developers, and this was a particularly difficult client in a very large government department we had a contract with, who was just notorious. And I dug my heels in because she wanted us to give her a fixed price quote for her software development project, and she wouldn't sign off on us doing a smaller engagement to help her scope her user requirements. And I made her cry.
Seems fair.
It's justifiable.
All right, if you don't have any questions, no one? And the dude, would you like the chewy caramel? There's still more, see? Or the dark chocolate? Double coat. You can't have both? They're not dark, so they're double coat.
I think
This
that
is
John
milk chocolate.
Bristow, every time I see that candy.
Oh, yeah? It's just my bribery. There you go, man. Thanks, man.
That's my favorite.
All right, no one else? Okay, well, thank you very much. Please don't get evaluate this session if you've got something else. Oh, sorry! Just yell out.
Just one question. You said that social media is important. I have a Twitter account, but I don't know what to say. So what do you say on Twitter?
Very good question.
For me, it's been completely authentic of who I really am. So there's some, obviously, there's some things that I want to share with the rest of the world, and there's other things that I don't necessarily want to share. And a lot of social media is just highlight reels, but I also talk about, some of my daily struggles. Oh, it was a bad day at work or something like that. But it's also building up other people that's already influential. And throughout my whole time, I remember, even though now I'm friends with Scott Henselman, I had I had asked him, I was like, please, can you tweet this or retweet this for me? And eventually he did, and it was a little project that I had created, and it did really well. And so after you get the influencer, you can get more influencers on top of that, and then you are amplified.
But it's definitely, like you're saying, what do I actually say? It's a fair question. I don't know. I just had an answer, that's all. Because I started, 10 years ago on Twitter. I didn't know either. It was like, oh, Twitter, that sounds fun. Yay. And I started basically with Windows Phone, just tweeting oh, that's a cool feature kind of thing, and no one cared. But that was just like somewhere to start, right? And when you have 6 followers, of course, no, you're not going to get a lot of traction. But you then start, all right, well, that was actually good, but this guy over here, if you follow someone that says it's different, and you start a discussion, a good constructive discussion, and then other people sees that, and then it starts building from there. But if you don't interact at all, no one's going to interact with you either. So you got to sort of put it out there and say, okay, I like this bit here of knowledge. Let me just comment on that. Or like, it doesn't have to be much. Just the fact that you say, hey, that was a cool, good job, or hey, why would you do it that way? I thought we did it this way, or whatever it might be that you have interest in. Does that help?
And the piece there is that the branding is that if you want to brand yourself with like DevOps, or you want to brand yourself with some technology, if you really talk about that product, you're eventually somebody that's in that space is going to see it. And if it's something cool, they're going to share it.
I love that. Don't feel like you have to be perfect. Share what you're learning. Share what you struggled with or got frustrated by. Ask questions. Find people to follow who are interested in the same things that you're interested in, and hashtags are your friend. So hashtag DevOps.
Absolutely,
hashtag
ask questions.
Hashtag to find other people that are also asking questions. The engagement is the big key though, and that's hard to try to figure out when you're just starting out. But when somebody follows me, I go and have a look at the tweets of what they've been tweeting to find out if I'm going to follow them back or not. And if it's just a broadcast account because they've hooked it up to automatically retweet everything they post on Facebook or Instagram, I'm not going to follow them back. But if they've actually been putting out useful information or having conversations with other people, that's the kind of people I like to follow.
Cool. We're going to have to end because we're out of time. Thank you very much for coming. Please do fill out the survey, which I was going to say before. Evaluate it. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, tell us what you thought. And you can find the session there if you want to go and watch it or share it on your social media. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.